All right, so homes. Eventually, at some point, you guys are gonna buy a home. It is a necessary expense. And a lot of people will be like, hey, it's my biggest investment. The thing is, it's not really it is an investment and it is an investment. It's kind of a weird one because you can't do without it. You have to live somewhere, right? You can't be homeless. I mean, you can, but it's not a good idea. Because you need to live somewhere. So as soon as you get to sell it and get the profit from it, well, then you're gonna turn around and have to put it into something else to live somewhere else anyway. So it's kind of like an investment you don't really get to reap the reward from unless at some point you move out and you rent it out to somebody else and it becomes that passive income we've talked about. So a home isn't initially, the one you're living in, isn't really an investment to begin with. But remember, it costs money to borrow money, right? And the longer it takes to borrow that money, the more it's gonna cost you, right? So homes obviously take the longest because they're so expensive. And I would say that, most loans, when you go out, I mean, the standard loan is a 30-year loan, which is 30 years, that's crazy. 30 years to pay something off. Obviously the positive thing is that once you get to the end of your loan period, you get to live in a home and you're not making a payment on it. So basically you're not paying rent, which is nice. You get to have more money that you can turn around and invest. But when you're buying a home, you don't want to go for that 30-year loan, all right? You don't want to buy at the very limit of what you're approved for. Now, you guys aren't familiar with this process yet, but when you go to a lender or a bank and you say, I want to buy a house, they're going to tell you, okay, how much money do you make? What's your proof of income? Blah, blah, blah. And they're going to say, okay, you are approved for a house up to $300,000, let's say it is, based on your income and whatever you're bringing to the table. And you know what most people do? They immediately start looking at Zillow and saying, okay, I want to find a house that's as close to $300,000 I can find because I want the coolest house I can get for what I can get. But all that means is that 300 grand is you generally at the very limit of your ability to afford a house, which that's terrible because if that's the case, you end up again with that same stress of like, man, if you don't make this payment, if for whatever reason you lose your job, you don't have that extra leeway to deal with it. So instead, you want to go buy at the least amount of house that you can stand. Not the best house you can get, but the least that you can stand. Same thing like with the first few cars. And that might seem like, well, I don't want to live in a crap hole, I don't want to live in some stupid house. Understand, this is a long-term goal. And if you do this, you'll actually be able to get to those nicer homes quicker than you would think. You'll be able to get there. So it's not like it's not going to not happen. But it gives you extra money to invest. And we'll go over like the actual math on it here in a minute. But that of course allows your work life to end that much quicker, go to retirement. And it allows you actually to pay off the house faster. If you did it on a 15-year loan instead of a 30-year loan, well, in 15 years, you've got whatever you are going to be spending for the next 15 years on the other house. Instead, you get to use that for investments. So the money, so much money is lost when you can only make that minimum payment on a long 30-year loan, and ends up being close to twice the original price. So if the house costs 300 grand initially, once you use all the interest and everything out, it's almost $600,000, just under. If it's a $400,000 home, almost $800,000. Crazy, right? Over the life of the loan. So instead of being stuck where you can't invest, you can't leave your job, you're losing money on interest every year, go for a cheaper home. Because that freedom will open up pathways to greater wealth, and because you do that, you'll be able to get a much better home down the road. And so you'll just kind of understand that the house you're buying is just kind of an incremental. It's your starter house. You're going to move up into a better house down the road. You're just going to go house to house. All right. So let's look specifically at a $400,000 home. I did the math on this one. All right. If you bought a $400,000 home and you put it on a 30-year loan, you end up owing over the life of the loan $773,000. Right. Again, like I said, almost $800,000, almost double the price. If you put it on a 15-year loan instead of a 30-year loan, instead of paying $773,000 for this $400,000 home, you spend $569,000, more than a $200,000 difference. And you're done paying 15 years earlier. Now, granted, that means you have to pay more per month to do that, but it's not like double the amount. That's the crazy thing about it, because interest does cost so much. It does go up, but it's not a double the amount. So what if you took that $200,000? That more than 200 grand that you're saving at that 15 years, and at year 15 you're done, you're paying off the house, and you start investing that money that would normally be going as a payment towards the house, and you invested it instead. You know how much money did you make after that 15 years of investing it at the typical market increase? Somewhere around $465,000. Okay, so now what's the difference in the value of the home? If you buy a house and you do it on a 30-year loan versus a $400,000 house on a 30-year loan versus a 15-year loan, it's not just the difference in what you paid in interest, it's what you also lost because you didn't make an investment on it. So that gap is like, oh, it's $200,000 over 15. No, it's $465,000 over that time period. It's so much lost potential as well. So you got to look at it that way. It's like whatever I'm spending a bunch of money on, if I can't invest it, I'm hurting myself. So buy a house that you can make a 15-year payment on and still have something left over to invest. That would be the ideal way to do it. And if you could pay that thing down even quicker, all the better. So this house that we're in right now, this house was bought 3 years ago. And it should be paid off in another 2 to 3 years, depending on how things are going. And it's larger than I need, but I spotted a dip in this particular real estate segment of the real estate market that I thought might rebound. So I bought it somewhat as I think this house is going to jump up in value, and I know I'm going to sell it at some point for a profit and go into something smaller. And I got lucky, and it did do what I thought it was going to do, and it went up in value by 25% in the first year, which is crazy. That's awesome, right? So it did what I hoped it would do. But this was actually a house that I could have paid for completely upfront, just in cash, boom. But I wanted to put that money into investments instead, because the amount of interest I was paying on it, and I knew that I would only be, doing that for maybe 6 years to pay off the house. I figured I'd take that money and invest it instead, and it would grow faster than the amount I'm losing on interest, and it is. So there's a reasoning behind it, and there are adaptations you can make for sure. But by and large, pay it off quick, put your extra money into investments. As I mentioned, I don't want to hold on to this forever. I don't want to keep paying forever. I don't want to slow down. I hate wasting money on interest. It bugs me. And I want to eliminate any kind of debt and regular payments as soon as possible. Same thing I'm kind of telling you guys to do.